Hi, it's Pete, Maverick Outdoors of Mindwiseman's channel. Everyday life tends to have structure and connections, whether it's the structure to your day, the plans of actions that you do from day to day, week to week, and then the connections can be the places that you go to and the people that you associate with. But there's another thing as well, which has structure and connections, and that's things that are structured, things that are built. Connections, links, hinges, nuts, bolts, screws, nails, anything you name it, virtually everything within the structure of daily life and the things that affect us have these structure and connections. This Roman wall is a structure which had a purpose to protect the Roman fort, town, and everything that was going on here, and all the connections that they had with trade, politics, and living daily life. Virtually here for nearly 300 years. We rely on all aspects of structure, of what we can do, so all our structures and fastenings and links and connections are as secure as possible. Plus, if we need to make any changes to those connections or structures, we have the abilities to do them ourselves. So whether it's domestic, at home, or where I am now, out on the trek and trail, or even Civvy Street in an urban environment. It's also where the Alpenlore comes into the equation. Even wearing it when you're not carrying all your survival kit or aspects of EDC. Because in any circumstances, you never know when you might need to apply all those connections if something gets damaged or something breaks. You can be in many different environments, places, where the connections, things you've got to fix, need to be repaired. So even a place like this, if because of circumstances or the location I'm at, all I've got is my multi-tool or my Alpenlore belt, and I know if there's an emergency and as a last resort I need to use those two bits of kit for fixings, repairs, bits of structure, I know I've got them to hand. So when a person's ready to do outdoors activities, they're going to have all the relevant kit that they need, from paracord to fixings and everything else that they need practical to use. But if a person's in an environment where the only things they've got on them are the clothes that they're wearing, this is where the Alpenlore belt again comes into the equation. At the end of the day, I don't want to be in a scenario where I have to unravel my paracord bracelet, but I still wear it every day just in case a scenario happens whereby it comes into its own and I have to use it. A lot of outdoors enthusiasts, bushcrafters, preppers, survivalists will wear the paracord bracelet, but they'll have with them paracord because that's what they need to use in the environment and the circumstances and the activities they're doing. It really has no practical use except for that emergency backup as a last resort. So initially with the Alpenlore belt, one doesn't really want to have to use it, but knows it's there for insurance and backup if eventualities arose where you had to use it. Okay, I'm back off to some uneven terrain where I need to change and don some different clothing and actually take some kit with me that's relevant for where I'm going to go. Okay, so I've got bits and pieces that I need on this 3 to 4 hour trek along this beach. It's a bit of an inclement day, it's nice fresh air, wind blowing, and just enjoying the environment of where I am, but of course with the appropriate kit that I need. So I'm utilising the belt as an attachment, utility belt. As you can see, all the bits and pieces, possibles pouch, first aid kit, gloves, and in there is my poncho tarp if I need a bit of shelter. So if the weather turns a bit inclement, I've got it either to don and wear or I'm on the move, or I'll set up a shelter with it. So the use of any kit and my Alpenlore belt is really practical for a place like this, or even here in the good old wild woodlands. Okay, the Alpenlore Lite survival adventure belt. But before I actually go into the spec and the materials used and the purpose behind this product, if I could just give you a little bit of brief history as to my connection with it. We're now early spring 2015, and just under a year ago I was contacted by a guy called Scott Palmer, the man behind this belt, who's been developing it for the past 2 to 3 years, sourcing materials, trying to make it as light as possible, making it practical for its use and reliable. And it's the world's first patented survival belt of its kind. And Scott is an experienced climber, mountaineer and outdoors enthusiast, and it's brought him round to making this product over the past 2 to 3 years. So he sent me one not long ago. He'd been in touch with me asking me ideas about such a product, and we've been in contact since, and he's developing this product with a little bit of my assistance as well, to a point where soon we're going to be bringing out the MAVERICK Outdoors survival belt. But let's just get on to the spec and the real advanced technology, basically, of this belt. So upon receipt of the belt, when you get it, it's contained in a zip seal bag with a little survival leaflet, which I'll go into in a little while. But this bag, multi-uses, any outdoors activity person will know the use of this bag, either keeping something protective in it, you can use it to collect water. It's as limited as your imagination. But it seals, it's got a very strong seal, and you can see it sort of contains the air. So whatever is in there will be airtight, waterproof, and also securely contained. The belt itself, many different colours. Made to order, but they come in 3 sizes: small, medium and large. So the buckle is military grade, high impact resistant. The triangular ring is 1,000 pound breaking strain, or 453 kilograms stainless steel. The Pro Cord has a 320 pound breaking strain, And the Pro Web, which has got multi-use, and I'll give you the length of these depending on the size of the belt that one acquires. The Pro Web is, wait for it, £1,290 or 585 kilogram braking power. So that's the spec on the materials, but now here's the sizes. So it comes in three sizes: small, medium and large. The small one has 2.7 meters or 8.8 feet of Pro Web core. The medium size will have 3.2 meters of the webbing core, and the large size will have 3.7 meters, or convert that into 12 feet of the Pro core webbing. Now, the Pro cord on the small will have 10.5 meters or 34 feet. The medium size will have 12.5 meters, or convert that into 41 feet long, and the large size finally has 15.5 meters, or a total of 50 feet of the Pro cord. Okay, of course there are different types of cordage that can be used for securing and fastening things, from paracord, bank lines, sisal, types of garden string, even elasticated bungee cords. But at the end of the day, we want a cordage that's reliable, versatile, lightweight, and can be used for many different purposes. And that's where the aspect of the Pro cord with the belt comes in. But let's get back to the survival booklet leaflet that came with the belt in the bag. As you can see, it's a handy pocket size that opens out, and on one side is the mini survival guide that gives bullet points on shelter, fire, food, water, direction, navigation, rescue, first aid, supplies, and then on the other side are the varied aspects of what the belt can be used for. Well, let's take a closer look at it. So the bullet point survival guide starts off with a very poignant sentence. First, tell someone where you are going and when to expect you back. This alone may save your life. And then goes on to the other bullet point aspects of survival. Then on the other side is detailed information with diagrams and descriptions as to using the belt in a survival situation, remembering the spec of the materials, different fastenings, fixings from shelter building, all different aspects of using the belt when it goes beyond being a utility belt to attach things to, or literally as part of your day wear. It's always there for backup. It can be folded up, put in your pocket, a wallet or a purse or a small bag, or else be put back into the zip seal bag, which obviously will protect it, but then you've got the two-in-one. You've got the little booklet and you've got the bag, which can just literally slip in your pocket. Okay, sometimes there may be reasons where it's not practical to use a rucksack. An example being a back or a shoulder injury, so you might actually have to utilise putting kit around your waist, like a utility belt. So although normally it's better to load carry your kit on your back in a rucksack, there can be situations besides injury where you might need access to your kit without taking your rucksack off and opening all the pouches or opening the top to get access to what you need. So this is where utilising the belt with what I've actually done here. So in comparison to when I did the beach walk, here I've actually got a utility bag that I can put lots of different things in that I've got access to while actually on the move. And then on the other side I've got my drinks water bladder, which actually just so happens to have two hooks, which I could hook, as you see, on the cord, and then the strap that would normally go around the waist has actually gone around my leg. So if for any reason I couldn't put this on my back, or I just wanted to have access to everything that's on the belt. So although you might think this is a bit sort of awkward to walk with things connected to the leg. There are lots of utility pouches which are actually designed for that. But of course, improvising and coming up with ideas yourself, you can attach stuff for easy access on your belt. So I'm now going to get on the move and get to my next location, which is a totally different terrain, to show you a few more demonstrations and actually take the belt apart and show you how some of the aspects of it can be used. Okay, that was a against the wind paddle to get up here, so I've actually come into a little enclosed area out of the wind because it's pretty gusty out there. Okay, so I just took myself up with some warmer clothes and can hear myself speak now. I'm out of the breeze and the wind. So back to the belt. As you can see, it's been specifically made so it can be used for day wear, and the sizes of the gauge, of the cord and the webbing makes it practical to virtually fit any type of trouser loop. Okay, a couple more aspects of the belt include, secretly hidden away just behind that flap, as you can see, that little white tab, is a mini survival kit, and I'll take it out and show you what's in it. Okay, it's got a nice strong seal tape, so I'll just get that out of the way. And then as you can see, it's a little waterproof bag that opens up, and then you take out the white wrapped piece of paper, and lo and behold, it's another little mini survival list of things with different types of fixings, cordage, securing, different types of knots as reminder, so you've got that on the belt at all times. And then inside the little package here, as you open it, you've got 3 matches, 2 fishing hooks, and on part of the little wrapped up detail of the knots and cordage fixings, where my finger is a little striking strip for the matches. And of course the mini blade, for different usage, as limited as your imagination. Okay, besides the colours, this grey and black one is known as a snake pattern. This one you can see has got green, olive green cord one side all the way along, and then the other side black, which is called solid pattern. And then there's another one which, as you could see, had a split colour, half and half. And another aspect is the belt is reversible. So as you can see, that's the outside, where the main colour is the olive green, and then if I turn it on the inside, it will be against my body, you can see it's black. So as far as reversing it, you just change the buckle round the other way. So to change the buckle so it's round the other way, so I have black on the outside, just unthread the webbing, take that out, turn it round the other way, take that through, so you've just done it in reverse, and you can see the buckle is ready to go in once I change the female part, so black is on the outside. and the green's inside. Now of course that would have much more relevance if you had a two-coloured belt where you wanted to wear it with different things, so that one side matched whatever you were wearing it with. So although the belt has the impression of looking like a rigger's or a harness belt, as it stands it's not to be utilised as such, but when you actually take it apart you can actually construct things that could act as a harness or a support, or something where you might need to retain something very strongly. But wearing the belt as it is, there are some outdoor activity people that will actually utilise the triangle ring as an example. Paddle boarding, where you stand on a board which is specifically made to float on the waters obviously, and while you're standing you actually paddle and navigate on the water with it. And some participants of that activity will actually wear this belt, and connected to that triangle ring will be a cord and a leash which obviously will travel onto the board that they're paddling on. Similar to the principle of a leash that a surfer would use to keep connected with their surfboard. But now I'm going to return to what we were thinking about much earlier. With the Alpenlore belt, one doesn't really want to have to use it, but knows it's there for insurance and backup if eventualities arose. About using the belt as a last resort in a survival situation. So now what I'm going to do is actually take it apart. So when you look carefully you can see where the cordage, the end of it, has actually been heat welded to create a fastening where it stays in position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that, but to save time I'm going to leave a little survival kit in there and I'm going to use a knife. Now I can start to unthread it. And in case you were thinking, well, where's the fishing line that's going to go with those two hooks? Three strands inside, which can be used for all nature of things, sewing thread, Hey, I can feel a pressure change in the air now, and those old clouds are coming over, and it definitely looks as if there's going to be rain on the way. I've been monitoring the winds and the cloud movement all day, so of course when it moves towards you and it's broken in the distance and there's clearer blue sky, then you know the weather's going to be milder, and that's why I took this route after monitoring the weather. But imagine if I was stranded here and there was no civilian life at all around here. I've got all the amenities I need. Nicely sheltered, as I said, I picked this place to actually get out the breeze, but when I go over to the canoe in a moment, you can see by the movement of the branches and the canoe's just under that, and the bits of foliage that are blowing around, I have a choice not to be in it, so I'm now going to make a move. I've now come back into the breeze. Hopefully some of it's going to be behind me when I'm paddling back, this time downstream. I know what you're thinking. Well, if you take the belt apart and it's originally holding your clothing up, then what are you going to do? Right, so I'm going to paddle back to terra firma and return to the woods, and I'll show you how you can keep your trousers up even when you do take the belt apart, and some other aspects of using the cordage and the webbing of the belt. Right, I'm not advocating you use the belt as a swing or exercise device, but if we're talking about reliable structures and connections, you know you've got it reliable on the Alpenlore Lite. And it's called light for a reason, because that's exactly what it is. It comes in at just slightly over 200 grams. It's compatible with your day wear, it's really comfortable, you hardly even know you're wearing it. There is another chunkier belt in production using the 880 Pro cord, and it will have less of a sort of day wear aspect to it because of its size and chunkiness, but it will be utilising the Astria Alpin clip buckle, which is renowned for being one of the most strongest buckles in the world. Okay, back to the Lite. It's standard practice and knowledge that the braking power and strength of any cordage and webbing, when being used to secure and fasten things, is based on its tautness and the connection either end, as you can see between my hands, to whatever the strength is, whether it's horizontal or gravitational hanging to create the weight. But if there's a slackness and then there's impact, it changes the equation and obviously isn't as strong. So it's always good practice to know that when you're applying any cordage or fastenings, it's always based on its tautness. So where you might be fixing something, then where it's actually secured, where it originates, it's actually based on the tautness, never on impact. Also, another factor that comes into the equation is if you want to strength the cordage, going from single thread then into double. So you can see it's double there, but if I were to connect it one end to something, I've still actually got, in principle, the single strength. So what you have to do is close off one end, so then that's independent, and if I get the other end and knot these two together, obviously you'd be making sure that everything is flat and straight, then I have got reasonable strength, and then if I was to loop it, if that's my connection, I've got the two strands making that connection. Then also, if the scenario dictated that I needed a very long length of cordage, then as far as the belt's concerned, I can get the two separate lengths after unravelling it off of the webbing, tie knot end, double it if you want to, and you really have to keep careful monitoring of the tautness with the two strands together, looping it, keeping that grip, and then of course I've already done it, but then you'd make the knot the other end. So if I've taken my belt apart and it was the only thing that was holding my trousers up, and for some reason I needed to keep all of the webbing as it was, then as a last resort I can use the cord. So my technique would be, is you wrap it around your waist, not too tight, once, and then you double it. And then getting a little survival blade, always making sure the cutting edge is outwards, holding it securely as far away from the cutting edge as possible, and then just slicing that through, and I'm left with this double waist length. Also, I've made a little toggle from a piece of green wood, and then just carefully niched out a little groove all the way round, but not too far, otherwise obviously it's going to snap. So it needs to be thick enough diameter, piece of green wood. You can check it before you even start to make the little groove that it's strong, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. So you can see on the little handmade toggle, I've done one knot to start with around the groove so it inserts itself so it doesn't pull off, and then I've done a treble reef knot here to keep it extra secure. Then through the length of the cord I've made 3 loops, as you can see, and I just bring it round my waist. Imagine if I actually threaded this through the loops of my trousers. The toggle would go through the first loop, and that's nice and tight. Obviously if I needed to wear it outside of my clothing, because I did have a belt on but I had to dismantle the survival belt for any reason, then of course I can utilise it maybe for making it a bit looser because this might be going round a thermal jacket or something very similar. Here's the replacement belt I made out of all of the webbing. Here's the longer length left over, but before I cut the belt to size, I got the whole length of the webbing, wrapped it round my waist, not too tight, but then I added the length of my hand to my wrist, as you can see here. Then cut it off, put the buckles on either end, decided I want to keep the triangle support ring there for any fastening if I need to, then just bring it around my waist, and that extra length from my wrist to my fingers enables it to lengthen if it wasn't just to tighten up my trousers, but I needed it a little bit looser because it was going to go around my outer clothing. The difference between the Alpenlore Lite and maybe a DIY version of a paracord belt made the same way as this, just be a longer version of this bracelet with a fastening to link. There'd be no potential of adjustments to either make it longer or shorter, plus as well the cordage thread, the way that these are made, would not allow access to loop and connect things into the cordage, as it does, specifically designed in by default of this belt, for you to be able to actually do that. So if you were to have a longer version of this sort of structure, it would not only be heavier, bulkier, not as comfortable, but it wouldn't be as fit for purpose and practical and so many other uses as the Alpenlore Lite. Building a shelter from scratch depends on the environment you're in. So if you're in the woodlands, it's knowing that sort of terrain, knowing the materials that you can use and the way to actually construct the shelter. But of course, if you was in the north or south pole, you better know how to build an igloo or dig in a snow shelter. Whereas here, as soon as I entered the woods, and if I was considering having to construct a shelter for sort of protection, I was predicting that I was actually going to stay in the place, or it was a survival emergency situation, then you need to sort of read your terrain. So as soon as I came in, I thought the first thing I want to do is conserve my energy and time and save as much of that as possible. So of course part of my shelter was already constructed. Of course the upright of the tree was broken from not far from the base of the trunk, but of course it just happened to be the right height as soon as I saw it for me to be able to sort of comfortably get under there and have a little bit of headroom. And then as it slants down, that's where my feet end are going to be. Obviously because it's slanting down, I'm using shorter pieces of wood as you saw me actually construct it earlier on, and then gradually going up to longer pieces. But if I had more energy and time and I was going to build a longer term shelter, then I could actually look at my terrain and say just here, where I've got two near enough vertical uprights, one there and one here, the width between that horizontal line is long enough for me to lie down in. So if you've got more time and the circumstances dictate that you can actually do something along the nature of this. The beauty of this one enables you to have a little bit more of a steeper incline, which then creates less water ingress in comparison, which as you can see is a different angle. This is about 45 degrees. It's about halfway between the horizontal and the vertical, and you wouldn't want to be going any lower than that. So the lower the angle, the more the water will settle from any rain or any inclement weather, and it will actually stay there and maybe ingress, where at least with this is just at the right angle. And if I did get any spots of water inside from it, I just come outside and then just replug it with more leaves and any more foliage, literally to seal the hole. But I mean, this is going to get me out of an emergency situation where I need to get out of the inclement weather if that's the case. Of course, with a structure like this one, the closer I bring them to get a higher angle, so the water definitely doesn't get any ingress through the back part of the shelter. So that's where, if at all possible, you just make sure when you do insert those, there is enough footprint for you to comfortably lie down and be out of the elements, rain, water, snow, whatever. But of course with this you can see there's a protrusion, which actually, if you take a vertical line down, has extended my footprint. Hence I've got more floor space. Extra piece of lightweight trusses to then support whatever foliage you've got. But in a perfect world, if you can get hold of this stuff, pine tree boughs, conifer, anything along that line of type of tree, then it actually serves a much better practicality to actually weave and create that coverage of where it protrudes over the top of the beam. It's also worth considering any type of foliage debris shelter you build. Every now and then cordaging the same way we've done here and here, but with the lean-to struts, just maybe making a cordage fastening to keep it secure, especially if we're talking about using larger, heavier pieces of wood, so it reduces the slide factor. But if you get your sort of gravitational positions and you get the centre of gravity, it's always going to support itself. It's a little bit like when you're building an arch, the stability and support of that structure is actually established when the keystone, it's called the keystone, goes in the middle, and then everything falls on itself. So the weight and the strength is created from the eventual keystone, creating the structure and support of the arch. Of course this isn't an arch, but it's the same principle. So we've always got that stability. Everything's centre of gravity, so it bears where it should do its weight. So of course there's less chance of it moving around, but as you can notice just here, I've got some sort of vines that I could use, double it up, maybe plait it, and then that's going to be strong enough to make particular fastenings as well if I need to. Again, it's surveying your terrain and knowing what you can use as soon as you go into that particular environment. So it all comes down to, at the end of the day, aspects of structures and connections that you can do to actually make the shelter. So what I've given is just really some really basic fundamental principles, but of course there's much more involved in building shelters, which is good to sort of find out about, research, so that whenever you're in different terrain, you know as best as possible what to do. In a woodland, obviously you've got many more materials to actually work with once you've got ideas of how to use them. So where I've collected a lot of the debris leaves, as you saw, I compacted on top of the main understructure. Then of course the leaves were gently compacted, and then just putting other bits of wood, bits of timber, just sort of placed so it keeps it compacted. So it's as if the leaves are sort of within a cavity of 2 layers of wood. The inner surface, and then just a few pieces that were placed on the outside here. Normally in woodlands, when you're actually in the heart of the woods, there's not really much breeze. If the wind, it's normally on the crown of the trees. So it's not as if I'd get any gusts of wind that would actually blow that away. But if there was, that's exactly why I just placed pieces of wood just to sort of sandwich it. And if I hadn't had my poncho or anything similar to collect the leaves and save time so I could get them all together, then I would have made up something with what was here and some of my cord, and swept a big collection of the leaves together, and then had to sort of hand carry them to my pitch. As you can see, it's long enough to lay down in. If I want to close this end off here, my head end, I can do with other bits of foliage and bits of stubs of wood. But if I wanted to at a later date make this bigger so it was an entrance from this end, I could do the same this side as what I've done this side, which will give me more protection. But at the moment it's sort of a bit more open plan, if you want to call it that, because I can have my fire set up here, maybe a reflector with pieces of wood built up to reflect the heat in, so it's really nice and cosy and protective away from the elements. So once you've got settled and the main shelter established, you can then go about considering, I've used the poncho to protect from the ground if there's any dampness, but also underneath that I could get some more debris leaves and even actually construct a wooden strutted bed, and then putting struts of wood and then just padding it out with leaves, and then I could put the poncho back on, or if I did need to actually wear the poncho, it would sort of be laying on a structure similar to this, but on ground level. So it's a softer surface to sit and lay on, and also it's a thermal insulation away from the ground. If I was going to have to pitch up for a shorter period of time and the weather wasn't too bad where I didn't need actually waterproofs and I wasn't going to move around, then of course I could use the old faithful poncho tarp as a shelter and protection, either fixed to trees or creating this sort of structure where I might actually have it on 2 uprights and just as a lean-to. So the poncho tarp could actually replicate the shelter that I've built, but obviously in a smaller, lighter version. I could actually utilise it with this shelter as well, as it stands with a diagonal lean-to, and then I could actually put some cordage in the rings and then fix it. Could actually have it so the tarp poncho was coming down at this angle, so the entrance would be in this way. Again, it's purely down to circumstance and practicality whether that would be a purpose, but at least you have the alternative and choice to actually think of that, using the cord to make the fixings of the poncho tarp to close in this side at an angle. So even here I could have used the same sort of principle, the same sort of shelter, but always testing, because safety is prime important. With the main aspect of surveying your terrain, the safety factor, especially if you're in the woods, is actually looking at where the deadfall is, which is the majority of the wood that I've actually used, and I haven't had to cut it. I use my saw just for convenience and speed for about 10% of actually making the shelter that I did. If there is a lot of fallen wood, fallen trees, then you look out for anything else that could be potentially dangerous. The old widow makers, as they're called, where there could be more branches that might fall, but again you just have to check as best you can and assess where you are for that safety. Of course, the subject of survival has many things to consider. Not just one's confidence in their knowledge and skills, but it's an ongoing process even for the most experienced. Plus as well there's the psychology, the survival mindset of never giving up. Plus as well there's considering eventualities that could unexpectedly happen when one's out on their adventures. The majority of people are not versed in outdoor living skills or survival techniques. So this is where the Alpenlore Lite is a really great way of introducing the subject. We can have friends or family that are going away on their travels, and it doesn't have to be anywhere in the wild outdoors, it can be somewhere very much within an urban environment. And this is where the Alpenlore belt really comes into its own, because it can be worn casual day wear and no one really knows what it could actually be used for. That's the subtlety of it. To a point where I've shown this to people who are not very much outdoor activity people, and let alone having any connections with survival as such. And they've looked at the belt and gone, really? Survival belt? How does it work? Expecting you to be able to press a button and search and rescue appear and a shelter morphs out of thin air. But when they've looked at it and they've seen the little leaflet, it's really opened their eyes and created interest. Here's another thing that keeps you connected: mobile phone. Waterproofed up in the Alpenlore bag, of course, and I put it in my pocket. But when I go outdoors and do my experiences, challenges, I like to connect with nature, and I don't want any technological connections or distractions, so I switch this off. But I take it with me just in case something unexpected happened where I needed to switch it on and make an emergency connection. Which brings us to sort of the primal aspect of what we can use without having to rely on any technology. And it always brings you back to cordage. It's one of the first things that man ever used in structure and connections. It's versatile, it's adaptable, but there's the irony, we've got more of a technological version of it, but obviously it doesn't need any technological backup. It's there to be used within the quality and the spec of the particular cordage. So even if you are a hardened outdoors enthusiast, from a bushcrafter, climber, kayaker, involved prepper, survivalist, the belt is a really good addition to one's kit to wear sort of with casual clothing without having to feel that you're going on a mission by having to take certain aspects of one's kit, because the belt is always there as a last resort reliability. All the materials are guaranteed, certified and quality tested before the actual belts are made by the Alpenlore craftsman. And considering the belt's uniqueness, because there's nothing like it on the market, the prices are very competitive, the shipping fees are very economical, you can expect not to be stung by any customs charges. So even more reason to consider investing in the product, because there's many new things coming in the pipeline. Some of the productions, new items I'm going to be involved with, new ideas, innovative ideas, basic things that are not being done at the moment. We're going to do something from its uniqueness right from the start, wherever possible. I don't do unboxings. I very seldom do tabletop reviews. I prefer to share my experiences and the kit I use in the great outdoors, from my wild camping, canoeing, bushcrafting, survival aspects of it, preparedness, all those sort of things. I prefer to share in real time. But I get inquiries, hundreds of inquiries every year regarding my kit as to where'd you get it, how do you use it, who's the dealer, who's the supplier, who manufactures it, all that sort of thing. So that's why I've called this the Alpenlore experience, taking you on a bit of a journey with the things I like to do, and also included my collaboration with Alpenlore Lite and all the other products. So check out the website, only take you about 5 minutes. There's plenty more information that I can actually cover here, because I think I've covered enough to give you the idea of the perspective of what's behind it. So check out the website, alpenlore.com. It's got all different references as to the prices, the sizes, that sort of thing. And for the investment in getting this really quality item, you won't be disappointed. Now, if I could share with you a sort of a survival rescue story, if you like, that I experienced about 25 years ago. I was working on a project in Blackpool, which is a coastal resort on the northwest of England, and for about 100 years it was a popular tourist destination where people go for their holidays. But then around about the 60s and 70s that all changed, and a lot of people then started to go to Europe on package holidays and travelling abroad. So about 15-20 years ago they started to rejuvenate the area by rebuilding the sea defences, making it more appealing to attract tourism, and redoing the sea defences with the esplanades, and just making it more attractive for people to return back there and for it to be more of a holiday destination. Now, this was well before that, my experience, as I say, it was about 25 years ago, and I was walking along the esplanade, and about 50 metres in front of me, where I was walking along the sea defence, which is very similar to this one. Of course, I was on the public access side away from the sea because the tide was coming in and splashing up against this wall. And about 50 metres in front of me I saw a group of people which I didn't really take any notice of until I got about 10-15 metres away, and then I saw there was a bit of a commotion going on. So if you imagine, by the time I got to about this distance, where that big tree is just there, I could see about half a dozen odd people leaning over the side and shouting over into the sea. So of course, as I got up closer I could actually see what was going on, and I leant over the sea defence wall and I could see a dog trying to swim in for dear life. Then as I looked closer over the edge, I saw its owner, a guy who was soaking wet, looking very stressed and tired, had obviously been trying to get his dog in that was off the leash and had got trapped in the water. The water was taking it back and then coming in, and of course it was tiring the dog out, and it looked as if the dog was on its last legs, literally. So as I was standing with a group of people, they were all discussing on how they were going to try and help this guy, not just to get back in himself, but also to help him get his dog. So there was talk of actually maybe doing a human chain, but of course that would have put people at risk and created even maybe more of a problem. But I'd remembered about nearly 100 metres back, where I'd previously been walking, that there was a life-saving ring and a rope, very similar to this one. So I ran back as quick as I could, acquired the ring and the rope, and then ran back to where the commotion was going on, and then we sort of had a plan of action what to do. So we passed the ring over the defence wall, holding on to the tautness of the rope, and then I suggested that the guy actually lay down as near to the inside of the wall and away from the water as possible, and then put his legs through the ring, rather than stand up, put his legs through the ring or pull it over the top of his body, because he might let go of the ring and actually fall over back into the water. So he sat down, put the ring on, and then stood up. And then what we did, we sort of kept the tautness of the rope and slowly let him go in. And I suggested that he turn with his back to the water and, like a slow motion abseil, step backwards into the water, and as soon as he could get his dog, grab it by its collar, and then we would tautly, with the rope pulling, bring him back into the sea defence wall. So we carefully let out the rope, its tautness, and he sort of backed into the water. Luckily enough, was able to get his dog, and then we pulled him back in. But then there was a challenge of getting him over the wall, which there was no chance of happening because it's obviously curved and he'd be stuck underneath the curve. What we decided to do was keep hold of the tautness of the rope with him inside the ring holding his dog, and walk him about the distance of about where that big tree is there, right the way along past that one to that tree just there, where access to the stairs were. So we did that, and we got him to the stairs carefully, He was really upset, well shaken. It was all quite, you know, quite an emotional situation for everyone concerned really, but it saved the day. And albeit he should have thought twice where he was taking himself, let alone taking the dog for a walk. Where one would think that when he was walking on the inside of the sea defence, the tide wasn't as far in, but it caught him out and he wasn't expecting it. But there could have been a major problem. What if I'd gone back there and the ring was damaged, broken, was vandalised, there was no rope? What would we have done? Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. If I'd have had something like my Alpenlore belt, because I was just wearing day clothes, I could have constructed some sort of harness with the webbing and then the cordage carefully to tether up and pull him back in and then guide him to the stairs. Anyway, it ended happily ever after. He was really tired, very grateful for what we did. Whether he'd have got out of the water with his dog, whether he maybe might not have, we'll never really know. So I'm now starting to lose a little bit of daylight, so I've returned back to my foliage debris basher for a little bit of sustenance. I've got a brew in my hot flask. I've also got a snack bar amongst other little sundries in the front part of the pouch, but normally this pouch I'll use for my hobo stove. And it's one of the few tabletop reviews I've actually done which was based on how I actually made the hobo stove. This is my hobo stove that I made myself, and I'll break it down and explain it to you in a moment. Okay, homemade hobo stove. But today I've used this pouch for the flask, and also below that was a small pair of Pack Light waterproof trousers. But if we just finish off with just one final aspect about survival, it's not all doom and gloom. The majority of survival scenarios normally get concluded within about 3 to 4 days. Once the alarm has gone out by the people that need assistance, or back at base people haven't returned and the alarm's gone out from search and rescue, it's normally concluded within about 3 to 4 days. So it's just biding the time during those days to get by the best way you can, and a lot of that is to do with just some really basic fundamental skills and of course having the right mindset. But I'm going to have my brew now, and then I'm going to make my way back to my home and start planning for my next little adventure, which is going to be a few days trekking over the Black Mountains of South Wales, doing a bit of wild camping, and also including aspects of fueling the body, the right way to go about the kit for that sort of terrain. So everything is all going to be specific. So I'm going to go home in a little while and start planning for that, and I'll most probably catch you in that little adventure. So thanks for watching this. Thanks for following me around with the Alpenlore experience, and I'll catch you again soon. Cheers.